Hi everyone, so I have something a little bit different for you today. We're going to be doing a bit of natural dyeing using this Tencel silk. I'm pretty excited, it's got a really lovely sheen to it. I haven't dyed with using a plant fibre yarn before. I've only used wool, so I think this is going to be cool. We'll see how it goes. I am going to use it for the test knit for James N. Watt's Batwing Mesh top. Boatneck Batwing, something like that, combination of those words. I'll put it in the description. But it's going to be quite a loose mesh top for summer. I'm thinking about wearing it over camisoles, and I've got this undyed fingering weight yarn, so I thought perfect. And I've been really wanting to do some natural dyeing for a while, so I'll walk you through what I do step by step. I'm by no means an expert, so I'm hoping it's just of interest to you to see the process. So yeah, let's get started. So the first step is to wash or to scour the yarn. This is to get rid of any of the oils, natural or unnatural, that have been added, and it helps the dye bond better. So you're going to want to submerge it in the water, and I just give it a good squidge and a good wash. Get rid of all those oils. You can see the water starting to get a bit cloudy. So I often use this book by Jenny Dean, Wild Colour, when I'm naturally dyeing. She's a real institution with the natural dyeing world, and her book is full of wisdom. Oh, got various sketches. I'll just talk through a bit about the madder process with you. But I highly recommend this book. So you can buy madder as a powder, or you can get it as dried root. I wish I grew it in my garden, but it takes a few years before you can get something that's harvestable. So I've chosen powder, and I'm just going to add some water to it. Basically, you want it to dissolve a bit and then not put anything too hot on it. So I'm just going to start with quite cool water. I'm just stirring it in. I'm heating it very, very gently. Like, I don't even want it to come up to a simmer. And I'll add a bit more water, heat it up gently. It's all quite slow and gentle with madder. You can end up ruining the colour a bit if you heat it too quickly. So just nice gentle heat. It's quite relaxing at this stage. And I've got my Tencel yarn soaking. I soaked it in a sort of gentle wool wash, even though it's not wool. And I'm just making sure it's been in there for about an hour, just to make sure the fibres have soaked up the water. It makes sure it's even for the colour to bind to the fibres. Then you don't want anything that's a bit dry in the middle of it. It won't bind as well. This is the madder powder that I chose. I've used it before. I often get a sort of pinky rusty colour rather than a true red, but it might be because of the amounts that I'm using. So I've got my fibre here all soaked, and we're ready to put it in. This is the exciting bit. So I'm just going to squeeze out a bit of the excess water and pop it into the pot. And again, I'm making sure that I don't have the heat on at all right now, but it's warm. I could put my finger in it, but not that that's good practice. Don't do that when you're naturally dyeing. Don't do what I'm doing. But it's about that kind of temperature. Anything hotter, especially with things like wool, protein fibres, can cause them to shrink. And we'll get sort of rustier, more browny tones on the madder. It'll spoil the red. So just going to be heating it gently and popping these bits in. And I'm going to come back to it quite regularly, give it a bit of a stir, move the fibres around. I'm hoping they'll stay roughly together. They are still tied, but yeah, I'm going to leave it here now overnight and come back and stir every now and again, not through the night, but before I go to bed, and yeah, throughout the course of the rest of the day. Morning, we're going to have a look at the madder pot and see how it's doing. I'm hoping it's got a bit richer and a bit deeper overnight, but let's see. Cup of tea first. So here it is. It's had sort of 8 hours overnight. It's looking quite purpley, so it does like vary on your water content. Last time I used madder, I was living somewhere else, and I think the water content was a bit more alkaline, and it can really change sort of whether it's more pinky or more orangey. But you can also use modifiers to change this, so you can add a bit of cream of tartar if you want it to be a more orangey colour. But it's got, it's hard to really capture it on video, but it has got a sort of purpley pinky tinge to it, so yeah, I'm interested to see how it turns out. I'm expecting it to be slightly lighter on a plant fibre than on wool. So protein fibre like wool tends to take dye a lot better than cellulose fibre like tencel or cotton. But we will see what this turns out like. It still needs several more days in the pan, so natural dyeing is not a quick hobby. It really helps you sort of invest time and energy into what you're doing, because you have to take it slow. There's no option to do it really quickly and to be impatient. So I find it quite a meditative, mindful crafting experience. It stops me sort of trying to race ahead, because I know that it has to take a while, and I quite like that about it. So yeah, we'll check back in later. So it's a few hours later. I'm going to put the heat on again. You don't want it to boil. You don't even really want it to simmer once it's got the fibres in. The cooler it is for the longer, the clearer red, the clearer red you're likely to get. But it's gotten quite cool now, so I'm just going to heat it a little bit just to warm it slightly, but I won't even bring it to a simmer. So here's the dye bath. I think it's got a sort of plummy, purpley, almost browny tone to it, which I haven't had with madder before. Mine have always been a bit more orange. So I assume that's partly the cellulose fibres and partly my water content, but I'm enjoying it, and so much so that I decided to just put in a bit of cotton ribbing, because I'm going to start making some of my own underwear, and it was a sort of natural colour. I thought, yeah, I'll chuck it in. I've literally put it in a couple minutes ago, so it hasn't had very long in here yet. And I'm not expecting either of these to be a really dark colour, because they're cellulose fibres and they take it less well than a protein fibre. But we'll see. I'm going to top up this water as well, because now there's more dye stuff in here. It needs a bit more volume for everything to be covered. Also, because there's more dye stuff in here, that will affect how much dye there is to go around. But I'm not after sort of really dark colours, just something a bit interesting. Cool, so it's about 6 hours since I put the fabric in, and 6 hours since you last saw the silk, the tencel silk. I think the colour's really starting to deepen. I'm excited. It's definitely a bit browny. Normally madder can go a bit brown if you overheat it, but I haven't overheated it. I've kept it really cool. I haven't even brought it to a simmer. So I don't know, it must be some other factors. But I really like the colour. I think it's going to look really nice. So what I'm imagining for this James and Watts test knit, I think it's going to be perfect. And yeah, I have some underwear plans for this. I'm trying out a couple of different free pant patterns, and I'm going to make some camisoles as well. Okay, so this is day number 3. It's definitely a bit darker and richer. Whoops. It's looking like a tangled mess of spaghetti, but I'm hoping that the bits that are tied are holding up. You can see the colour that's forming. My cotton's coming along a bit too. I reckon another day or two and we'll see where we are. Hey, so it's the 3rd day of everything steeping in the dye bath now, and I think it's pretty much ready to come out. It started to deepen quite a bit in colour. I think it's got to as deep as it's going to get. So yeah, I think it's at a good point to take it out. It's pretty ready. It's definitely got a brown purple overtone rather than an orangey yellowy one, which is new for me, but I'm quite excited about this. The jersey's looking good as well, and here you go. So I'm pretty happy with this. You see what I mean, that it's got a sort of more purpley, browny, plummy tone still, rather than a yellowy orange one. But the jersey's dyed much more than I thought it would. And the tencel, to be honest, given they're both plant fibres. I mean, they are definitely darker now than they were when they've dried, because they're wet. But still, I'm pretty pleased with this. I'm going to take it out now and rinse it, and then I'm going to hang it on the line. So I've detangled one of the skeins. The next one it's still going to be a challenge. But you can see it's going to dry a bit lighter, but it's definitely got that nice maddery colour. So while it dries, here are some greedy chickens who love dandelions. Hey, chicks. Yeah. So it's dried a bit lighter than I expected. So I'm going to pop it back in the dye bath for just a bit more. I think it's been getting a bit deeper the last couple of days. I've left it by a sunny window, and I think I'm going to do a bit of solar dyeing. So instead of putting it on the heat, you can, leave it to the sun to do its magic. So I'm gonna try that, and we'll see how it goes. Maybe just another day. So here it is next to the sunny window. It's going to get loads of sun today because it's about 26 degrees here in Gloucestershire. So I'm going to hope that heats it up and does a bit of natural dyeing, both with the fibre, the pigment and the heat, which is cool. Okay, so it's been in for another day in the really hot sunshine. So I think it's looking a bit darker. We'll see how it dries. I mean, it's a plant fibre. If it's not super deep, that's fine. I'm hoping to wear it with a burgundy summer camisole I'm making anyway, so I don't want it to be exactly the same shade. So that's my little disclaimer. I'm going to give it a rinse and I'm going to hang it out to dry. Hopefully start knitting later this afternoon. It's boiling still, so I think it's going to dry super quickly. Just giving it a bit of a rinse with the hose at the bottom of my garden as well. Madder's got the tendency to have all these little bits in the ground up root, and I don't want them flying all over my living room when I knit. I think the tone is a bit warmer. It's a bit sort of rustier. We'll see how it dries. I'm hoping for it to be slightly less pink. So the yarn is finished, it's dyed, I've washed it a couple of times and I've left it to dry, and I've wound it into a skein. So here it is. It's a coppery, sort of light coppery colour. It's a warm pink, which I like. I don't like cool pinks on me. I like it to be autumn hues. I think it's come out really well. I don't know if it comes across, but it's got a real silky sheen to it. So I'm amazed. This is just tencel, but it looks really silky. I think it's the sort of thing that's going to knit up really nicely into a lace mesh top. I think a whole block of this would probably be too shiny for me, but because it's lace and mesh, I think it'll have a really good effect. So I'm about to wind the first skein, quite excited. It's still got a bit of madder dust on it from the root powder, so I thought I'd wind it outside and make the most of this sun, and then all the little bits should fly off instead of flying off in my living room when I start knitting with it. Here we go. Not perfect winding, as you can see, but it's got this gorgeous lustrous sort of sheen to it, and it's a sort of coppery colour. I think it's really pretty. Morning. So I cast on the Batwing Boatneck Mesh top by James M. Watts the other day for my test knit. It's basically some repeats to do the batwing shaping. I'm not really familiar with doing mesh or lace knitting, so this is kind of new for me. I did on round one have to email him to ask how to do something or to clarify the pattern, but it turns out that if you end up doing this pattern, that there's sort of a repeat within the repeat of the mesh. So now I know that. I'm off. I'm on row 5, but I've got today and tomorrow off. I just wanted a bit of time off away from work to actually just to do some gardening on my allotment and to do some making, because I've got some sewing plans in mind that I want for going away in summer, and I wanted to make some progress on this test knit and some other bits. Too many works in progress, but I'll show you a little bit as I knit this one up. You can see the mesh is starting to take shape. Yeah, join me for a little morning tea knitting session.
So I always used to knit English style, which is holding the yarn, the working yarn, oh, it keeps sticking on these needles, it's so annoying. Holding the working yarn in your right hand and sort of throwing it round. But during lockdown I did so much knitting that I ended up hurting my wrist a bit. And I thought, now's the time to learn how to do continental style. So after watching many YouTube videos, I now feel more comfortable with it. I have to look at it, whereas I didn't have to look when I did English style, but it's so much quicker and the wrist movement is so much smaller. So if I show you, if I've knit English style, how I did it anyway, sort of throwing it around, so I'm doing quite a big wrist movement, where when I hold it continentally, there's barely any wrist movement at all, as long as I don't grip my needles too tight, get too tense. It's such a smaller movement, and it means I can do way more knitting without getting any wrist pain. So yeah, I'm happy with that. It took a while for me to get my tension right, but I got there in the end. Just lots of practice basically, but I'm much happier doing it now. Sometimes I still start off with a couple of stitches of English knitting first. I'm not really sure why, but have I done something wrong there? Nope, all good. Just to like orientate myself before I head off continentally. Recommend it. Also, I forgot to say that this is the Merchant & Mills Sunday gown in some of their linen. I made it sort of springtime last year. It's not a really cold weather one. I didn't make it with a thick material, but I love it just for putting on in the morning. And now that I work from home, I wear it for too long, really. I love it. I made my partner one as well, and I just sort of scaled it up basically. But it's very nice, it's very cozy. Making progress on my Batwing Boatneck Mesh top. I'm getting into the pattern of the mesh now. I'm having to look at the instructions less, so it's starting to get a bit quicker and build up a bit. So I think it's looking nice. I think the colour's cool. I'm hoping it's big enough. Morning, so I'm doing a bit of knitting in bed. I feel a bit tired, so I'm just gonna keep on going on this Boatneck Batwing. And I thought I'd show you my progress. So I'm all cozy, I've got my cup of tea, and I'm just going to do a few more rows this morning before work. So the other day I separated for the front and back. So this is knitted bottom up, and you can start to see you can definitely see now the pattern working out. So this is the side, sort of side seam, and then we've got the mesh knit either side, and I think it's cool. It's kind of reminded me of chainmail, but I think when it's blocked, you're going to really see that pattern. So I separated for the front and back, and now it's going really quickly, obviously, because I'm doing half the amount of stitches at any one time. So it's starting to feel like progress now. So I've got the body. Here's where I split for the front and back. These are the rows I did yesterday, and then this will be the armhole opening. So I've just got to keep doing this. I think it was 36 rows. It's pretty hard to tell rows here, so I really should write down what I do. I'm definitely one of those people that just tries to remember what they've done or be able to sort of count back, and normally that's fine. But I think all the stitches on the edge should be just knit stitches on this side. So I think I'll be able to count back. And anyway, most of the time I just do it until it fits right rather than has the exact right amount of rows. I don't know about you, a lot of people seem to count and tick off what they've done, but sometimes I find that actually the number of rows doesn't really work for me with the length of what I want, so I tend to measure or just try it on. That's the good thing about knitting circular, I guess. Anyway, as I'm starting to ramble, I'm going to carry on doing a bit more knitting, but I just wanted to show you the progress. Once I've done this front, I'll move on and repeat the exact same thing on the back, and then it's just binding off shoulders, and I think I'm done. So I split for the front and back the other day. I finished one of the sides, and what you do is you leave the the shoulders on, and then you cast off the centre, which would be the neckline. So I've left that on the needles, and now I've swapped over to do the other half, which would be either the front or the back. I'll just use whichever side looks best as the front. Sorry, there's a plane going overhead. It's feeling nice and sunny in the garden though. Probably hear one of the small planes and my chickens making a racket in the background. Sorry about that. But yeah, I'm nearly done. I just need to finish this half and then do the same as I did on the other side. And then it's just joining the shoulders. One thing I've definitely realised though is I really don't enjoy knitting mesh. Maybe it's because I'm not as used to it, and like everything, it's harder until you get familiar with it. But oh my god, it hasn't really been an enjoyable knit, to be honest. It's nothing to do with the pattern. It's basically when I make a mistake, which I often do when I'm knitting at night, because I'm basically just trying to keep my eyes open on knitting on the sofa, and I can't figure out what I did wrong. It's because I don't understand it as well as I do regular knitting or other types of knitting, and I find it hard to like work to understand what I've done a couple rows back, and I start to get a bit mad looking at all of these different hexagons and trying to figure out which bit's supposed to join where. So it's taken me longer, and I've had to do a bit of frogging, which in itself was a bit stressful. So I can't really talk you through that because I don't understand it myself. I'm just kind of winging it. But, you know, not everything is for you. And I don't think I would knit another mesh thing, but we'll see. I think it'll be cool though. And when I block it, I think that this pattern will be a bit more obvious. I think I'll use it a lot, especially in weather like this. But yeah, I don't think I would spend this amount of time again on a mesh now. I think I'd rather... I like jumpers, and I like little t-shirts, and I like stuff that I can just chill out and do rather than having to stare at all the time and constantly check the pattern. But I know some people probably prefer more of a challenge, but that's me. Also, I've just noticed I've got these little rose hips forming. I'm quite excited about that. Gonna make some jelly this autumn. Anyway, there you go. Little musings on mesh knit. Morning. So I am hopefully finishing off this test knit today. I've made quite a lot of progress over the last few days. So yesterday I did the front after I split for the sleeves, not the sleeves, at the armhole, and I made a start on the back, and you can see I'm nearly there. Just need to do a few more sets of the mesh. So I'm getting excited. It's nearly done. It's sunny today, so I'm hoping I can wear it tomorrow, which should also be warm, hopefully. And you can see these are where the two shoulders will be, and this is the neckline. And I think it's going to look nice. It's going to be cool. It's really sunny out, so I'm going to hopefully finish it in an hour or so, and then block it so it can dry in the sunshine. I also need to seam the shoulders, but yeah, that shouldn't take too long. So I'm just going to do a little bit more now. But yeah, as I said yesterday, I'm not sure that mesh knitting is for me. I quite like to knit while I'm doing other things, and I find it hard with this. So I did go to the cinema yesterday though, and I took a project that I'm working on. It's on size 5 needles and it's Aran weight yarn, and I did have to stop at one point because I thought I might have made a mistake, but I managed to do a good sort of 15 minutes of knitting through the trailers. I didn't really want to knit during the film, but I knit through the trailers and that was fine, and I didn't really look at what I was doing. But with something like this, with the mesh, and also the fact that it's fingering weight yarn, I definitely have to look at what I'm doing. So I'm just going to finish this off, and then I will show you when I join the shoulders. Okay, so I've finished the front and back. You can see there's the neck, here are the two shoulders. So now it's time to bind the shoulders together. So the pattern asks for the 3 needle bind off, which I quite like, but it's important to do it loosely, I think, otherwise it can be quite tight. So I've got I've turned it inside out. I've got the 2 right sides of the shoulders facing, and I'm just gonna start binding them together.
In case you haven't done 3-needle bind off before, it's just a way of joining 2 knitted seams together. It's quite simple. Just go sort of knitwise into the front and then knitwise into the back one with your 3rd needle. Making sure you're not dropping anything. Just moving the stitch that you did before over it like you're casting off. So into the front on the front one, into the front on the back one, knit 2 together, off, and then pulling that cast off stitch over. Sorry, it wasn't really supposed to be a tutorial, I just thought I'd talk through it as I do it. I'm going to soak it in a little bit of wool wash, even though it's not wool, just because it's nice and gentle and it smells great. I'm going to soak it in that, get it wet, and then I am going to shape it and lay it out outside. It's not sort of bright sunshine now, which is actually quite good. It's warm and sort of partially sunny with a slight bit of cloud cover. So it's not going to be too aggressive, but there's a good breeze as well. So I think it will dry quickly, but you can see it's sort of binding it together. There's the seam. And then from the right side, you shouldn't be able to see the seam. So yeah, it's looking good. Can be a little bit fiddly when you first do it or when you're remembering how to do it, like I'm here. But something I find helpful is to use the back needle to pull the cast off stitch over. As with anything, it takes a little practice. And trying to get a 3rd needle that's bigger or the same as the width as your other needle so that your bind off doesn't end up too tight. You don't want it to be really loose, but you want it to be quite a relaxed tension. I'm so happy I'm nearly done with this now. Mostly because I want to wear it, but also because I'd kind of had enough with knitting it. Sometimes I feel like I love knitting, but I feel like with some projects I'm just kind of rushing to get it done, and then I think, why am I doing this in the first place? Is it just to have a finished thing? I don't think so. I certainly, some of it is that I love choosing new stuff for a project. Who doesn't, right? And I love casting on and the excitement of a new sort of idea. But there are others that I really savour the process of and just a really enjoyable knit. And I think I'm learning that doesn't have to be fine yarn or thick yarn. It just has to be something that I can work into my life and it keeps me interested, but without being sort of taking all, tons of concentration and it's being something I have to check all the time. I like to sort of just relax as I'm doing it. I don't want it to feel really complicated. And I think there's always going to be some projects that are more complicated than others, but a medium amount of complicated suits me. Right, I've done my first shoulder seam. Like any cast off, I've got my little loop, so I just need to cut it. I don't have any scissors. I just need to cut this and then put that through, and then that's one shoulder done. So it doesn't take very long. That's the inside, nice and neat. Make sure I don't lose my loop. And then that's the outside. So that's the 2 bits of mesh joined together. So you can't see those cast off stitches because they're on the inside. I'm probably telling you stuff you already know. But I think it's quite a nice, neat way to finish it. And when I block it, I'm hoping it'll sit a bit more flat on the shoulder. Oh, it's looking so close. Just one more shoulder and then blocking. And I'll show you why I do want to block it and then what it looks like when it's done. So here it is before blocking. I still need to weave in my ends. I've just tried it on. It fits around here, but it is a little tight. It was a little tight to get my head on, and it's a little tight at the arms, and I wish the shoulders were a bit wider. But I'm gonna block it and see how it goes. I might unpick this and do a couple more rows and do some more increases. But I want to make the test knit deadline as well. So I am gonna block it, and yeah, we'll see how the fit is after that. You can see there is quite a lot of stretch in this, so yeah, let's see. So I've added a little bit of gentle wool wash in here. It's just well, it's not even really warm, it's mostly cool water. So I'm going to pop it in there. As I say, I don't normally do this. Sometimes I just spray block it, but I really want to reshape a elements of it. So look how rich the colour is when it was wet. I wish it was more like that when it was dry. I'm not sounding super in love with this, am I? I do like it. I think it's a cool thing. I just think it's also, I need to figure out a way to wear it more as well. So I quite like things that have got multiple uses in my closet, but my wardrobe, rather than just being quite specific. You can see a bit of colour still coming off as well. So I'm just going to leave it in there for a bit, and then I'm going to rinse it out. And then there's a sort of roll in a towel that I always do with wool or with knits to help them dry more quickly. Just leave it to soak for a bit. So I lay my wet knit on a couple layers of towel, and then to get excess water out of it, I just roll it up. And I feel like, especially with wool, this gets out so much water. Sometimes I'll kneel on it like this. It does get out a lot of water. And then I'm going to pop it on a dry bit of towel outside, and I'm going to shape it. It's quite windy out here today, sorry if it gets a little noisy, but I'm just laying it out on a towel on a table outside, and I'm just shaping it. After all my chat about not doing the bind off too tightly, I wonder if it actually is a little too tight and drawing these shoulders in a bit. But I've tried to stretch it out a bit, gently, and the neckline. So we'll see how it is when it's dried. I may end up redoing those shoulders. I haven't bound off with mesh before, and I think it's got a lot more flex in it. So I think I needed to I might go up a needle size or two and make it really, really loose, this bind off. But yeah, we'll see how it looks once it's dried. So here it is all blocked and dry. I think it's improved the structure of the mesh a bit. We'll see if it's a bit more comfortable to put on. I've still got weave in my ends. But it feels like it's holding its structure nicely now. And I think I've increased a bit of room for comfort around the neck. It definitely doesn't have as much ease as some of the other tested versions I've seen, or the sample, but I think that's just down to user error because it's my first time, and also I probably should have just kept going a bit more, but there we go. I'll try it on. So here it is, all finished. It blocked nicely, I think. It hasn't made a huge difference, but it's definitely more comfortable. I might still lengthen these bat wings a little bit, but it's definitely more comfortable now. I can get it on and off my head easily, and yeah, I think it's really cute. I think it goes really nicely with this Chloe bias skirt that I made earlier this week, and I'm actually really happy with the colour. I am pairing it with this summer camisole that I made from a jersey from Blackbird Fabrics, who are in Canada, but did a big sale a few months ago, and I think it looks nice with the slightly darker jersey underneath. Yeah, I'm pleased with it. I'm gonna wear it out tomorrow. I think it's a cute little outfit. It's quite warm tomorrow, but it's not boiling, so I feel like this is a good combo. You can see I made a couple of mistakes where I was getting used to the mesh, but so what? Thank you, James and Watts, for letting me test knit, and sorry it's taken a while for me to post. Recommend.